first of all, as always, we need to develop the right motivation. With such right motivation, then we should study on this text. So, as we all know, we are studying the doctrine purpose, Garland of Jewels teaching, which is taught by Chögyam Papa to the Prince Chibik Demor. So today, first it explains about the definition of a proper text or proper tradition, or anyway, like proper text, which means a text that has no mistake in the words, and also the meaning of these words which are in the text are validified by the true valid cognition. So whatever it is said in the text, it's a fact, it's a true meaning, it's a meaning, it has it's a meaningful one, it's a purposeful one, and it's the truth. And both the word and the meaning are validified by the true valid cognition, and also there's no inconsistencies in the words and in the meaning. So contradictory between the topics of this text and inconsistencies within this text are not there. And also in this text there's no unrelated topics, all are related. So such text is a proper text, it's a authentic text. So this authentic text is authenticated by the true valid cognition, and also there's no contradiction to each other, and also there's no inconsistencies. So by listening and studying and contemplating on such authentic texts, through this one can abandon the gross part of the mental affliction, or one can control the gross part of the mental affliction. So this is a benefit that we can gain through study and contemplation. And also then, based on study and contemplation, we meditate. And by meditating, one can eliminate the seed of mental affliction completely. So through this, then one can attain the long-term happiness, long-term bliss. So a text that can lead us to a temporary happiness and long-term happiness through study, contemplation, and meditation is a text that is known as a proper text, authentic text, and a noble text. Such text is taught by Buddha and not by others. So we should know what we should learn. If we learn a wrong text, if we learn the wrong subject, then no matter how much effort that we put on such wrong text or improper text, still we won't be able to gain realization or attainments even though we have the right motivation, if we study the wrong text, then there's no great results that we can obtain. So therefore, it is important to have the right text, the authentic text to study. And Buddha, when he taught, he didn't rely on any other teachers from different religions. He teach these precious and profound teachings to the power of his own excellent wisdom, or his own ultimate wisdom. To his own ultimate wisdom, he discriminates what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned, and then guide us to gain liberation and enlightenment state. So this is the Buddha who can do this, and this is the Buddha who can guide in a such a way, in a authentic way. And those who are following the Buddha's teaching and following in a proper way based on moral conduct, studying, contemplation, and meditation on the Buddha's teaching, then they become a scholar, and they become wise, and they become noble being, etc. So not only Buddha is great, but those who study and contemplate and meditate on Buddha's teaching will also become a great, or will also become a noble being. So any one of us can become a noble being or highly realized being if we follow the Buddha's teaching in a proper way. Now, it explains about the path and result of Buddha's teaching. This also has two, Theravada and Mahayana. Theravada is also explained in 5 subjects. First one is the refuge. The excellent master is Buddha, and excellent text is his teaching. So by believing in Buddha's teaching and by having sincere and unshakable faith in the Buddha, due to this, those bodhisattvas and followers of the Sharavaka yanas, they can study, contemplate, and meditate, and also they increase their discriminative awareness or the wisdom, and then they also become a noble being. So now we are talking mainly according to the Theravada tradition or the Pali tradition of Buddhism. And Mahayana, we can say the Sanskrit tradition of the Buddhism. So the prince, by having the knowledge about Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, by knowing these 3 precious jewels or the triple gem, then you should have the faith, and you should have the sincere devotion, and then you should make offerings to them. In order to rescue the fear of this life as well as the fear of future lives, one should take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until the end of this life. Now we are talking according to the Pali tradition. So according to the Pali tradition, one takes refuge until the end of this life and rely on the triple gem, taking refuge in the triple gem, rely on the triple gem. So taking refuge in the triple gem is the method that can remove all the faults like sickness and other faults. And also taking refuge in the triple gem is the fundamental quality on which one can gain all the attainments or all the realizations of this life and the next lives. So therefore, one should put effort in taking refuge in the triple gem. Now, talking about the keeping the pure moral conduct, which is the base. So, as it is mentioned earlier about the relying on the triple gem, now by relying on triple gem, then one should enter into the Buddhist path. And those who are entering into the path should follow and should do or should act according to the Buddha's teaching. And the base of this teaching is the moral conduct. Generally speaking, in any field, discipline is very important. In any mundane field, whether it's in sports or in everywhere, discipline is very important. If you don't have a discipline, then you can't be good at doing such and such things in your own field. So those who don't have good discipline will not be successful. All those who are successful in their own field are those who are very disciplined and who are working hard and who are diligent, who are putting lots of effort based on their good discipline. If you don't have discipline, even if you have the knowledge, people will not like you, people will not hire you, people will not respect you. Even though you have the knowledge, if you don't have the good discipline, then people will regard you as a bad person, and they will not regard you as a good person. So based on good discipline, then one should gain the knowledge. So here also, keeping the pure moral conduct is the discipline. It means keeping the good discipline of the Dharma. And there are different types of discipline, different types of rules according to the different vows. Actually, in the Buddhism, there are 3 vows: Patimoksha vow, Bodhicitta vow, and Mantrayana vow. And within the Patimoksha vow, there are many vows. So here it talks about the 8 precepts which one can take for one day until tomorrow morning. So 8 precepts means abstaining from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and telling a lie. Then also abstaining from drinking any alcoholic substances or drinking any alcohols. And the sixth one is abstaining from songs, singing song and dancing, etc. And seventh one is abstaining from sitting on a high thrones of bed. And the eighth one is abstaining from eating afternoon or evening food. So by keeping the 8 precepts, then it means during that day, one remain in the pure moral conduct. So one should put effort to keep this pure moral conduct during that day. And if one does this, then then it can make easier for oneself to keep the other precepts. And also it said, those who keep the 8 precepts in their future lives, they can be reborn as a god of the desire, celestial being or gods of the desire. Actually, there are gods in all these 3 realms: the gods of desire, the gods of form realm, and the gods of formless realm. So, by keeping such good moral conduct, one can be born in the in the pure realm or heavenly realm. And now the next, to keep the individual precepts. So what it means is, the cause of taking rebirth is having attachment to the aggregates. So by abandoning the attachment to the aggregates, and also by abandoning the crowd of people, or by abandoning one's own ordinary job and ordinary life, and one's own body, speech, mind action. If it is not stand by any non-virtues, then it becomes pure. So through such patimoksha vow, if one can maintain the purity of one's own body, speech, and mind, then it becomes easier for us to keep the other vows of the patimoksha vow, such as novice vows or bhikshu vows, or like that. Anyway, once we are accustomed, once we are used to keep the moral conduct, then it makes easier and easier to keep in the later stage. So anyway, keeping the vow is very important. But if we keep the vow with the wrong intention, then it is not right. Then it is not the cause of gaining liberation and attaining the enlightenment state. So not only is it important to keep the discipline, keep the precepts or rules, or have to have the good discipline, but also it is important to have the right motivation. Having the having good discipline with right motivation is the most important thing. Then such action is the cause of gaining liberation in the enlightenment state, and that kind of action is the method or the antidote that can remove the negative karma and mental affliction, and that can be the one that can lead us from suffering of the samsara in general, but and in particular the suffering of the three lower realms. So it's important to keep the good discipline or the moral conduct with the right motivation. Keeping moral conduct with wrong motivation, wrong intention, then we won't be able to gain high realization through this. To gain high realization or to have a good result, one must keep the rules or precepts with the right motivation. And now Shakya Prabhupada is asking the prince to keep the moral conduct as much as possible. Now Shakya Prabhupada is saying, even though you can't keep the all 8 precepts, one can still keep 1 or 2 precepts as much as you can. And by keeping these precepts, one can be disciplined from that point of view. And once you are used to it, then one can increase your precepts, and then gradually one can keep all the 8 precepts without any difficulties, and one can keep the 8 precepts all the time without any difficulties, and also then naturally the virtues, the positive actions will increase. So everything depends on whether you are used to it or not. If we do it continuously, then one can get used to it. Then there's no such thing that is called it is difficult to do. At the moment, we might think it is difficult to practice, it is difficult to keep the moral conduct. And why we have such thought is because we are not used to it, because we are not practicing enough, because we are not connecting between the knowledge and the practice enough. If we can connect between our knowledge and our practice, and if we continue to do so, then there's no such thing that is difficult to do, or there's no such thing that we can say this practice is difficult to do. So if we used to it, then nothing is impossible. Everything is possible, and everything is doable. We can do all these things. And to do this, first we need the wish to do. We need the eagerness to do these things. If you don't have interest, if you don't have wish, or if you don't have the eagerness, then it is difficult for us to do practice. So therefore, it is important to do the practice. And when we say do the practice, it means mainly to do the practice through our mind, not just through our physical and verbal actions. The main practice should come from the mind. Without the proper practice from the mind, there's no proper Dharma practice, there's no proper result that we can gain. So therefore, we must emphasize on the proper practice of our mind. In the Bodhisattva Charvatara teaching by Shantideva also said, if one can keep the mind, then we can keep all the other precepts. Or if we can protect the mind, then we can protect all the others. And now next is to put effort in the study, to put effort in listening to the Dharma teaching, or listening to the to other subjects or topics. So those who are remaining in the pure moral conduct, then for them to know everything, to gain greater knowledge, and also in order to liberate from all the obscurations, for this purpose, one should study different subjects, different topics, by relying on qualified masters, listening to their teaching, and reading authentic texts, which is about these particular topics, and also having discussion on such topics. So through this, the prince should put effort and should be diligent on doing this. So through this way, the prince should learn and study. And by this way, then one can master on all the topics. Also, by knowing all this, then one will know what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned. And so one should do the abandonment and adoption without making any mistake. If we adopt the wrong thing and if we abandon the right thing, then it is not right. So after having the knowledge of all these Buddhist teaching and other topics, by knowing all this, then one should take what is to be adopted and one should reject what is to be abandoned without any mistake, without making any mistake. Even though one has knowledge, but if one does something that is different from one's own knowledge, then it is not right. For example, many people have the knowledge of how bad it is to drink alcohol or to smoke, although they have the knowledge that these are not good things to do. But still, they are doing it. They are taking alcohol or they are smoking. Then it means your knowledge is not using. These persons are not using their own knowledge. Although they have knowledge of these things, that these things are not good, these things can damage your own internal organs. They know these things. They have such knowledge, but still if they do, then it means they are not using the knowledge. So similarly, after having the knowledge on teachings, then one should act according to the teaching. If we have the knowledge, but if we act differently, different from the knowledge, that was different from the knowledge or different from what we understand, then it is not right. We should act according to our understanding, according to our own knowledge. That is important. And now, particularly, it emphasizes on putting effort in the Buddha's teaching. So particularly the prince should put lots of effort in studying the Buddha's precious and profound teaching. Actually, in ancient time in India, there are four schools of Buddhism in India, which are known as the Vibhashika, the Sautrantika, Chittamatra, and Madhyamika school. These are the four main schools of Buddhism in India. If one should learn all these four schools of Buddhism, and also should learn the three, the Sutra, the Vinaya, and the Abhidhamma, or the Tipitaka, and also the Tantra. And one should study their commentaries. Without any cessation or without any contentment. We should continue to study. One should continue to study on all these, because these teachings shows the actual essence of the knowledge. By knowing all these in a proper way, then it will definitely increase your own virtues or your own positive mind, your own positive actions, your own virtuous actions, mainly your own virtuous mind. And now next is, after studying, then one should contemplate. So those who have doubt in what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned, with such doubt, then it won't fulfill one's own wish. It will be very difficult to fulfill our own wish or to gain the results. Even though one cannot understand each and every words of Buddha, or even though one cannot understand Buddha's teaching fully, one should not take these meaning in a wrong way, or one should not explain in a wrong way which are not the truth. Because if one explains the Buddha's teaching in a wrong way, or if one misinterpret the Buddha's precious teaching, then it will be the cause of having more and more negative thoughts, more and more improper thoughts. And through these improper thoughts, it will be very difficult to fulfill one's own wish. So therefore, whatever you know, whatever the prince know, should be examined thoroughly through genuine logical reason. By using the genuine logical reason, if one can understand and if one has the conviction on these meaning, then it can illuminate and it can remove the darkness of ignorance. Just like if one is looking at an object which has the light of sun or others, then one can see it very clearly. One's own eye can see it very clearly because that object is in the light. That object has the light of sun or any other light. Because of that, when one can see it clearly. When the object is in a dark place, then one cannot see clearly. But if object has the light, especially the light of sun, then we can see it clearly. So by listening to the teaching and also by contemplating on the teaching with logical reasons, with great analyzation, then even you learn little at a time, but if you continue to do so, then gradually or slowly it can increase your knowledge. Just like they're saying, the accumulation of drop can later can become the ocean. So if we accumulate every day more and more, then one day it can become big. So just like this, even though you study little by little at a time or every day, then gradually it accumulates and oneself and it increases your own wisdom, your own knowledge. So therefore, one should not be discouraged. One should always put effort, and one should always continue. So in our life also, we should continue to practice Dharma all the time, even though we cannot practice a lot every day, but whatever we can, we should practice it, and we should do it every day without any break. So then gradually it accumulates more and more, and then at the later stage, it will definitely be a big one, or it can be a cause of gaining good result, positive result, good result. So here the example is just like the honeybees. They put a lot of effort to make the honeycomb. They cannot make honeycomb in few minutes or few hours or so. It takes lots of their time and energy. By putting lots and lots of effort and spending lots and lots of time, then finally these honeybees can make their own honeycomb. So similarly, even though we cannot study or practice too much every day, but if we continue to do so, then it accumulates, and then at the end we can gain great knowledge, and we can increase our practice in a great way. So studying and contemplation, these two are the great method to understand the Buddha's teaching thoroughly. For example, those farmers who are working hard on the field, then later they can gain the good crops. Similarly, those who are putting a lot of effort in the farming of study and contemplation, then later they can get the good crop, or they can get that can be the cause of, later then they can be the cause of the food of dharmic realization. So what it means is, farmers, when they put effort in the field, then they can get good result, good crops. Similarly, if oneself put lots of effort in study and contemplation and practice, then at the end one can get good crops, or one can get good food, which is the good food is the dharmic realization. So study and contemplation are the cause of having the good or genuine dharmic realization. Now, it explains about the contemplation itself. This also has two mundane part and super-mundane part, or the worldly part and beyond worldly part. So at the moment, now it talks about the meditation. Now it talks about the meditation, which also has two, mundane and super-mundane, or worldly and beyond worldly meditation. And this process of meditation is according to the Pali tradition of Buddhism. So after studying and contemplation on the teachings, then one should do the meditation. One should do study, contemplation, and meditation based on pure moral conduct, and one should stay in a very conducive place, and also one should take refuge in the temple gem, and also then one should develop the pure renunciation thought, or one should have the pure thought of renunciation. So with such intention, or in other words, with right motivation, one should do the following. So by thinking of the samsaric phenomena, the nature of the samsara, then one sees the nature of the samsara is suffering, and the cause of these sufferings are the karma, the negative action, and the mental affliction, such as desire or attachment and anger, etc. So by reflecting on the cause of samsara, and if one gets the conviction that these are the real cause of samsara, by having such conviction, then one should develop the sincere wish to eliminate these suffering and the cause of suffering. So one should have such wish, and one should think on this again and again. So once we have the sincere, the true and genuine thought of renunciation, then one should put effort in the meditation, which is the cause of gaining the liberation. So those who wish to meditate, first they should take refuge in the temple gem. They should prostrate and make offerings, and in front of the temple gem they should confess all their negative deeds, and also in front of these merit field, they should rejoice in all the virtuous deeds and noble activities of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and also request to turn the wheel of Dharma to Buddha, and also requesting them not to enter into the Mahaparinirvana and do the dedication, etc. So anyway, one should do the Sevalim prayers, and one should do the practice of Sevalim. And this Sevalim is one that is mentioned in the Samanthabhadra prayer, the king of the prayer, aspirational prayer. So by doing these practices, then it will increase our own virtues, it will increase our own merit, and also through this it can purify one's own stains and increase our own merits. And then those who has more attachment or passion, then for them, according to the Pali tradition, they should meditate that all these objects are a skeleton or like that. And those who have more anger, then they should think that they should practice the loving kindness to all without any discrimination, thinking may all the sentient beings gain happiness and cause of happiness, because such thought of loving kindness is the direct opposite of the anger. Anger and loving kindness cannot be together at the same time towards the same person. If one can extend the genuine loving kindness mind towards all the sentient beings equally without any discrimination, then there's no chance for anger to rise. There's no chance for anger to develop. For example, when the glass is full of cold water, at that moment, at that time, in that particular glass, there's no chance for the hot water to enter into this glass, while it has the full of cold water. While remaining the cold water, you can't have the hot water in the same glass at the same time. So similarly, we cannot have anger towards anybody while we are having the loving kindness towards all the sentient beings without any exception. So when we have anger, then as an antidote to this, to control this, one should develop the loving kindness. Actually, one should always try to maintain this practice of loving kindness. This is very important. And how to check whether we have this loving kindness or not? We can examine our own way of thinking. If we hate someone, or when someone does good, and at that time, instead of rejoicing in their good deeds, if we hate them, then it means at that particular time, we don't have the loving kindness toward that particular person, which is not right. Then if we cannot extend our loving kindness to all, then it means our practice of loving kindness is not the limitless loving kindness, because there are some exceptions. We don't extend our loving kindness to all the sentient beings who are limitless, etc. And if we have strong ignorance, then we should study, contemplate, and meditate on the dependent origination, or the 12th link. And if we have more arrogant thoughts or more pride, then as a remedy to this, then one should think a person is formed due to the aggregation of earth, water, fire, wind, space, and consciousness. When these 6 elements gather together, then the person is formed. Then there's a person. But if we examine each of these 6 elements separately, then there's no such thing called person. Then we can't find the person. When these things gather together, then we impute it as a person. So we should think, in reality, if we examine, then we cannot find a person, because if we examine these 6 elements individually, then there's no person that we can find. So when something that is not found, then there's no point of having the arrogant. For whom one is having this arrogant? For nobody. Nothing is existent. If we examine it carefully, then we can't find the person. Then when there's no person, then why do we have this arrogant? Then there's no point of having arrogance. So through this way, we should try to remove this or control this arrogant thoughts. And if we have conceptual thoughts, if our conceptual thoughts are strong, or if we have more conceptual thoughts, then we should practice the breathing exercise by remembering the inhalation and exhalation. When we inhale, we think we are inhaling without thinking any other. And when we exhale, we should think now we are exhaling. We should think mentally. We don't need to say that we are inhaling or exhaling, but when you inhale, we just remember it's inhaling. And also we can also think when it retains, we can think now it's the retention, or we are retaining the air. And then when we exhale, then we think we are now exhaling the air. So this kind of breathing exercise can help us to control our conceptual thoughts. So through these methods, we can control our mental afflictions. So these practices are done with a great concentration. So these practices are also none other than the calm abiding practice, because at that time we are focusing on it, we are paying attention on that particular practice without any distraction. So that itself is the calm abiding practice. And in order to abandon the root of all the mental affliction, which is the selfish thought or self-direction thought, for that, first we should think all the objects or the apprehend apprehended or all the apprehended object are just the gross part of the apprehended objects are just imputed in the relative truth. In reality, there is no such thing called apprehended object, which is true, which is not changeable, which is permanent. We cannot find such thing. So if we can examine up to the atoms, the gross thing, the gross part of the form. If we examine it, then we can examine it up to the atoms. And then these atoms are also not inherently existent, or they are not truly existent. And they are also changing momentarily. And also, the apprehending subject aspect of the mind is also something that is not true existent. It is no true substance, and it is changing momentarily. When we have the present moment of such mind, at that time, the past mind is already ceased, and the future mind is yet to rise. And this present moment of the mind is also changing momentarily. So therefore, in the reality, we can't find any atoms or any momentary mind that are true existent or that are permanent. So in reality, nothing is permanent, nothing is true existent. And so by realizing it and by meditating on it, then slowly one can gain the insight wisdom, or one can gain the vipassana. So for this one should remain in the mindfulness, or one should meditate. So anyway, those who wish to gain higher rebirth and liberation and ultimate enlightenment, ultimate result. So for such person should meditate or practice the karma abiding and insight wisdom, or shamatha and vipassana. So by doing these practice, then one can able to abandon these obscurations, these hindrances that hinders us to gain liberation and enlightenment state. So by continuing on this practice, then gradually one moves forward on the path of accumulation and the path of accumulation and the path of application. In the Buddhist, there are 5 paths. The first 2 paths, known as the path of accumulation and the path of application, these 2 are considered as the path that are in the that are the mundane part or the worldly part. Then the next 2, the path of seeing and path of meditation, these 2 are considered as a noble path. And the 5th path, the path of normal learning, is the state of Buddhahood. So gradually moving forward on the path, then one can gain the path of seeing and path of meditation, which are the beyond worldly path, or super mundane path, or the noble path. So at the moment, as I said before, we are talking these subjects according to the Pali tradition. Actually, all these three, Charvakayana path, Pratyeka Buddha path, and Mahayana path, all these three, each of them has 5 paths, like path of accumulation, application, seeing, meditation, and normal learning, according to their own way or their own tradition. So by doing the practice, if one does the practice with the skillful means, and if one does for 3 countless eons, then at the end of this, then one becomes Buddha, who has infinite qualities, immaculated qualities. And if one does these practices without the skillful means, then one can attain the Charvaka Buddhahood or Pratyeka Buddhahood. Now, to summarize the topic of the Pali tradition or the Theravadan tradition, starting from the taking refuge until obtaining the result. These are based on Abhidhamma, Kosha, and other Charvakas, Yana's teaching. And those who are going to enter into the Mahayana path should also know the Theravadan path or the path of Pali tradition, because for those who are wishing to enter into the Mahayana path, for them studying the Theravadan tradition is like the stairway to enter into the house of Mahayana, or to enter into the city of Mahayana. And especially, and of course, those who wish to follow the Charvaka's path, then they should learn this. And also those who wish to attain Buddhahood, the complete Buddhahood, the perfect Buddhahood, or those who wish to enter the Mahayana path, they should also learn, because they should gain all the knowledge, they should learn all these subjects. And also, as it is said in the teaching before, learning these are like a stairway to enter into the city of Mahayana. So with this, I will conclude my today's talk. And with this, the Charvakayana or Theravadan or the part of Pali tradition is completed. So at the end, we should always dedicate all our merits to attain Buddhahood for the sake of all the sentient beings, and especially to attain, especially we should dedicate all our merits for our good gurus, good health, long life, and turn the wheel of Dharma far and wide always. Thank you.